Welcome to the Outside the Ring. I'm here with my guest, Magnum CK.
What's up, man? How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'll start by asking, what got you into the world of professional wrestling?
I don't think I stood much of a chance. My uncle was a pro wrestler and a promoter, and my dad was a bass guitar player, and my grandpa was a race car driver. So I don't think that a normal life was in the cards for me. So I grew up around wrestling, so I guess it always has seemed very normal to me. I mean, I was going to matches when I was just when I could start to walk. I mean, I was going to matches. So I've been around it on both ends. I would get to the show early, which was cool, and I get to stay after the show. And then as I started getting older, I would get to help out with the shows and stuff like that, like things like taking ring jackets, back to the back and stuff, and like assisting here and there. And just did that over a long period of time, and then just started doing it myself when I turned 18.
So, how long have you been wrestling for?
Well, I started training for real in 2004 when I was 18. And I did that for I trained for probably like I feel like I trained for like 3 or 4 months before my first like battle royals and stuff like that. But you keep training. So I trained for a total of like 6 months, like straight, like just training. And then I had my first match in February of 2005. So I don't think battle royals really count. So I always figure my first match was February 2005. So that's when I started. I had some time out here and there for different things. Sometimes other things that kind of got me out of wrestling or an injury, which had me out for a few years here most recently. But so 19 years ago is what I would say. About almost. I'm coming up on the anniversary.
How'd you get the ring name Magnum CK?
So my wrestling name before when I very first started was Chris Kahn, Kahn, and that was partly because I wanted something alliterative. I wanted something with like a k sound. And Madeline Kahn is one of my favorite actors. She's really fantastic. So I used that name for a long time, and then around 2016 or so, I was doing a play or a musical. I can't remember. And I had to grow a mustache. And so I had the hairy chest and the mustache. And someone said something about Magnum TA. And then I made the joke like Magnum CK because those were my initials. And then I was like, man, like, I don't know. Like, like I like that. Like, I don't know. It sounded more interesting to me than just like a regular name. I've always been a big fan of Japanese wrestling too, especially the last like decade or so. But it felt like a Japanese style type name. Like I don't know why. Like it just felt like a weird kind of name that would be from another country, and it felt. My whole thing has been like kind of retro futurism. Like my if there was a vision board about the Magnum CK character, and the name fit that better than Chris Con, like just a regular name. It just stuck. Like I did it as a hashtag or like a joke or something. And then I started, I think Pedro DeLuca one time introduced me as Magnum Chris Khan. And then I was like, hey, like, can you just call me Magnum CK? And he started doing it. And I was like, man, I like it. And Pedro's awesome. Pedro could say anything and I think it sounded cool. But and it just stuck. It just stuck after that. So it's it's different, I think it's backwards because you think it'd be like CK Magnum or something like that. And that's kind of why I like it. I don't know. So I think it's just been an interesting thing. It doesn't fit. When I first started in AIW, I had like a more theatrical character gimmick, and I didn't think it fit for that. So I was a little self-conscious about it. But like with wrestling, it's funny. It doesn't matter if you say it long enough. Like the Big Show is a weird name, right? Like Triple H, like just spelled out like TRIPLEH is weird. But when you hear it enough, it doesn't sound weird anymore. And I think that's what happened with Magnum CK.
What promotion did you start wrestling for first, and what was your first match?
So the battle royals I did first, I was down in a place called Nitro, West Virginia, for a place called XMCW, and I wrestled for them. Once I started wrestling as well, and I actually wrestled in that building years later, down in Nitro. I forget the name of the building, but IWA East Coast was running shows in there as late as like 2016, 2017. So I got to wrestle in that old building a few more times, which is interesting, and kind of a cool full circle thing. But so when I started training, I lived in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and that's when the NWA still had like its affiliate promotions, and they had NWA Tri-State, and it was West Virginia, Kentucky, and Virginia, maybe. I can't. No, it wasn't Virginia. Oh my, Ohio, of course, duh. Um, and but they mainly ran in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and kind of the surrounding 60-mile area in West Virginia there. But I went down to the City Park Pavilion. They had shows there every month, and I just started working. I just graduated high school and I started working in a movie theater. And one of the wrestlers also worked at the movie theater in town. And I was like, "Hey man, how do I do this?" And he's like, "Come on down, we'll get you in the ring." And so I went down, and the first thing I did was a flip bump over the top rope into the ring because I don't know why. It was fine. Like I did a pretty good job. It was loud, scared everybody. I'm a big guy. And the promoter came over, and I knew the promoter because he knew my uncle. Richard Arpin was his name, and he just passed away like literally like a month ago or 2 months ago, from cancer. But he had lots of health problems and stuff. But I'm not going to speak ill of the dead, but he was a wrestling promoter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
like he was a typical like what you'd expect from like an old school wrestling promoter. And he came over and he's like, "Hey, Vern." He always called everyone Vern. He's like, "If you want to do a tryout for training, that's $50 today." And I was like, "Okay, well, I anticipated that." I had done some training camps over the summer, some other places, and he was like, and training, it was like $2,000 or something. And I was like, "Well, that's the end. Like, I can't." I was like, I didn't have a place to live. I was like crashing with a buddy. Like, I had no money. Like, I was like, "Well, never gonna wrestle." And then I remembered the next month. I went back the next month because I remembered that my grandparents had this old like church building. It was this old, like built in the 19th century, like sturdy old church, rugged building that was just empty now. And I was like, "Hey, if you want to set up your ring there and have your training there, you can have it for free if you just let me train. And instead of having training once a month, which is what they were doing before the show, you could train all kinds of people." And of course, he saw dollar signs. He was like, "Absolutely, sounds good." So I wrestled probably 200 matches in that church building. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of maybe thousands of hours of training in that church building over the next like 6 months to a year for free.
Yeah. How did you hear about LPW?
LPW, I feel like it was probably through Jock Sampson, if I remember right. I know I've wrestled up there a bunch of times. I feel like the first few times we're in a tag team with Jock. So I think Tim Horner Jr. I think knew Jock. So it had to be through him. Jock knows. It feels like he knows everybody.
You're the first person to say Jock Sampson. Everyone else that I asked about LPW either brings up Tim or Kenny.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it probably was. I mean, because he had some sort of relationship, and then we were doing a tag thing for a while, and I'm sure that I mean, he was really good about just finding places to work. I mean, I don't think he wrestles anymore, but if he did, I mean, he could wrestle every weekend somewhere.
Yeah, Jock retired, I think, sometime last month. Don't take my word on that,
Gotcha.
though. Yeah. His last match, I believe, was against Justin Plummer at
At
I for-
IWC, then.
yeah,
Yeah, that's funny. Oh,
because I
that's cool.
commented on IWC's post saying I tagged him. I said, "Hey, Jock, are you retiring?" He said, "Yup."
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I could see that. I could also see him coming back within the next 6 months.
Doing a Ric Flair type thing.
Yeah.
How did your team with Jock Sampson come into like
Same
play?
same way the same way my name came. It was a joke. I had a podcast at the time with some other guys, and I'd mentioned we were doing some videos for Remix Pro Wrestling. Like my filmmaking friend of mine. former like partner of mine. Like we owned a business together at the time, and he we were business partners for this filmmaking business, and we were doing videos for Remix Pro Wrestling, which I'd been involved with for a long time. And I'd mentioned on one of our podcast episodes, we were talking about some of the videos we've been making. We were making some that featured Jock and Deacon Knight and a couple other folks, some kind of comedy type videos. And I mentioned, I was like, yeah, I'm going to start a tag team with Jock, and we're just going to be farmers, and we're going to be called the Mega Plowers. And yeah, not a great joke, right? Like stupid joke. But and then I can't remember if he heard it or if I mentioned it to him or somebody did. I don't remember. But then he was like, "Hey, I'm actually kind of looking for a tag." Because even back then, that was like 2016, maybe. He was like, "I'm looking to kind of wind down," which is funny that it took him like 8 years or whatever, 7 years to like actually wind down out of wrestling. He's like, "But I'd like to do some tag matches. Like, so I'm doing, I'm feeling really beaten up and having some trouble, and so we just started doing it. And then we didn't go the farmer route. We just did kind of like the 80s style. But that's funny. It's just one of those many, many things in my life that just started as a joke and then became a real thing.
Yeah. I remember we were there at LPW, I believe it was the second Fight for Fremont. It was you and Ben Boone.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. That was a really easy one to do. I mean, Ben's great to work with. Yeah, I definitely remember that. That was a cool building, that little building. They packed, it was like a little studio almost. Like they packed people into there. Yeah, I remember that. We wrestled a couple times. We wrestled outside too. Was that the outside one or the inside one?
Outside was Fight for Fremont.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was like that was the blow off that we did. That was the last one then. Yeah, that was a fun one too. That was a lot of people. Yeah, it was like a street
Yeah.
fest type thing.
Because I remember my dad, one of his friends, or
Hmm.
some of his friends, got a picture with you
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, those guys were great.
afterward.
I used to see them at all those shows.
Yeah. Um, and they were actually involved in the main event, Superman Lover versus Aaron O'Ryan for the title, for the LPW title.
Well, I haven't heard those names in a very long time. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Superman Lover retired from not wrestling, but from LPW. He
Oh,
mainly
okay.
wrestles in the Michigan area now.
Oh, move. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Um, who are some people you grew up watching?
I watched everything. I grew up in the kind of the middle of nowhere. Didn't have a lot of neighbors or friends in my neighborhood. There was no one really my age around. I was like just kind of a lonesome little kid out in the middle of nowhere. So I watched a lot of wrestling. I watched a lot of tapes. My uncle gave me lots of tapes. Um, early on, I've always been a big Rick Rude fan. I always liked Andy Kaufman. I had a copy of I'm from Hollywood that my uncle taped for me off of like TV, like I think early Comedy Central in like the 90s or something, mid 90s or something. But I remember watching that a lot. Memphis, like Andy Kaufman from Memphis, that whole stuff was some of my favorite. Ric Flair, which is weird to say now because he's kind of tarnished his legacy in my view in a lot of ways, but in the 90s, I mean, he was awesome. And for the longest time, this will sound crazy to you probably, but we didn't have like cable or satellite dish out there for the longest time. Um, so we had like an antenna. So we got WTBS out of Atlanta, and from one of their substations or whatever. And so I would get WCW wrestling on Saturday night. So I'd watch a lot of that. And then I think around like 1996, we finally got a satellite dish, so I could watch Raw, I could watch Nitro, and they were on at the same time, and so I would watch one and tape the other, or sometimes try to tape both of them. And I would watch one the next day, and then I would rewatch all week. I would just watch Raw and Nitro, like the tapes over and over, like every evening, and just rewatch them and make compilations. I had two VCRs set up, and I would make my own tapes and stuff. So all sounds really like caveman stuff now, considering how easy it is to do that stuff. But I watched everything, and then when I started finding out about ECW on the Sunshine Network, I watched all that. I mean, I would wake up on Saturday mornings and watch 1950s and 60s wrestling from Chicago and stuff that they would play on like ESPN Classic. Like I consumed every. bit of wrestling content I could find. But those are the names that stick out. Rude, Flair, Andy Kaufman, Terry Funk was always a big favorite of mine. I was
I
really
see him on
excited.
that picture behind you.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's yeah. He's a fan of my he's a fan of mine. I'm a fan of his. Of course, like I was the right age for like Stone Cold Steve Austin, so like he was definitely a favorite. And honestly, I grew up really favoring the WCW a lot more. Probably watched that the most. I would tape
Yeah.
Raw and watch Nitro a lot, and then watch Raw the next day.
You're bringing up WCW. I gotta bring this out. I don't know how well you can. Mean Mark
Yeah,
Callis
that's awesome. What a
for
random
his
thing. Like they
Undertaker.
have all these Undertaker things, and they're like,
Yeah.
let's do the 1989 version. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I've got some Undertaker figures because
Nice.
the first match that I watched was it was on YouTube from Raw back in 2002 ladder match
With
against
Jeff
Jeff
Hardy.
Hardy,
Yeah. Yeah, I
WWF
remember
title.
watching that live because I remember the match was fun, but I remember how bad Jeff Hardy's promo was at the
Yeah.
time. Even when because I was like 16 or something when I was 15 or 16, and I'm just being like, ooh, get him off the mic.
And after the match, I'm still standing.
Mhm.
You haven't broken me, Taker.
It's weird to think that that was like 22 years ago.
Yeah. And then Taker comes back to the ring, raises his hand, and then Jeff just collapses to the mat. Who would you say were some of your toughest opponents?
Like toughest in what way?
Um, in the ring, like toughest to fight.
Like, it's tough because I feel like I'm pretty easy to work with, so I'm pretty adaptable. I've had a lot of different. I kind of like a styles clash. I think it's kind of fun to wrestle people who have a much different style than me. I just over the weekend I wrestled Jason the Gift Kincaid, who has a much different style than me. He's very much like I mean he can do anything too, but he's a very technical wrestler. So that's kind of fun to do that type of stuff where it's like I'm kind of more about the show and he's very technical, so we make that like blend, and that's really fun. Um I think it's hard to work with anybody who isn't to doing something new or open to having a little fun,
Yeah.
or anyone who's very rigid. um I can't really think of any like major names that come to my mind that were like awful to work with, but I can say that like I've wrestled a lot of very well known wrestlers, and the ones that were fun to work with were the ones that were open to like, hey, what do you want to do out there, like let's have some fun. Like I'm very good at when I get to do my thing. And I don't mean like I control everything. We have to do what I want, but like when I get to be myself, um, it seems to get over really well. It seems to be very popular, and the matches seem to hit on, the way they're supposed to. And I usually have a lot more fun, but there's been those times where it's like, hey, we have you wrestling like so and so from TV, and they don't really seem interested. They're just like, yeah, you're just a body, and I'm going to do my moves to you. I mean, those are no fun. I mean, that doesn't happen very often, but it has happened. Um, but or sometimes it hasn't happened. This hasn't happened in a while too. But sometimes you're in a match with a lot of people, and it feels like no matter how much you try, you can't like carve out your space of the match where it's like, hey, we should split this match and like all get kind of highlighted. And I'm very giving performer. And I think I'm very gracious, sometimes overly gracious. And I've watched some matches back and been like, man, I should have taken more for myself. Like I really just gave and gave and gave and gave. But I think that just comes from I like to think I'm just kind of a nice person. So that can come from that too. I mean, I've definitely known like Katie Arquette comes to my mind as someone who's like she's not the only one, but like Katie's very nice, very nice. Um, and so like I feel like that some of the times we've worked together, I've wanted to make sure like I was doing it wasn't just her like um being kind enough to let me do the things I wanted to do. So you know what I mean? So it's a double-edged thing. Like I want to do my thing, but I also don't want to steamroll someone and like totally negate what they're wanting to do. So I see myself in that way with Katie, where we're very similar, where we can get caught up in like trying to help someone do their idea and just, you know, not get a piece of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And talking about Katie, she was the special guest ref for you guys' match
Oh my God,
at
that's right.
for
Holy cow.
Fremont.
I completely forgot that that was the angle there. I was trying to remember. I was like, who was the ref? Because it was like a whole thing where there was like a love triangle type thing, but not like
Yeah.
kind of, but not
It
really.
was
That's right. Oh, I'll have to bring that up
he,
to her on Saturday. I forgot about that.
he's back in May or the show before Fight for Fremont. It was you versus Ben, and then in the middle of the match, Ben's phone went off
That's right.
and the
That's
video
right.
played and you rolled him up.
I totally look at you. That's the funny thing about doing this. Like, you just forget so much.
Yeah,
Like,
so many moments stuff.
yeah, yeah. Because it's happened to me before where someone would be like, "Oh, I'll introduce myself to someone like, oh, we wrestled." I'm like, "Oh my God, we did." Like, I'm sorry, buddy. Not like I'm some big important person who's done all these matches, but just like you just forget. Like, you just, yeah.
Yeah. Who would you say are some of your favorite opponents to face? Or do you have,
I Yeah, I have a few. I have a few. Marion Fontaine comes to mind immediately. I'm wrestling him here in a couple weeks, which I just found out about. So I'm excited about that. We've wrestled many times. Um, we're on the same wavelength completely. Like we feel the same way about wrestling. We have similar style. I mean, he's a much better wrestler than me, but like we have similar styles in the way that we approach it and everything. And he's just an awesome guy. We're we're friends in real life too. I mean, we get along really well. Um, Effie, I wrestled Effie the beginning of August for the first time, and just easy, just completely easy. Like same deal. Like we feel the same way. Like we get along really well. I could tell as soon as we met each other, we started talking. I was like, this is gonna be great. And in the ring, uh, it was just like we just didn't even have to communicate with each. Same with Fontaine. Like there's no communication. Like we're just doing it, and it's really fun. There's only a handful of people that I can say I've experienced that with, where like we're just out there wrestling and no one has to say anything. We're just doing it. So Fontaine comes to mind. Effie, um, it's easier to think of. I mean, there's less people that I have a hard time working with. Honestly, I mean, I feel like I get along with most people pretty well. Um, I'm trying to think of someone that I've wrestled multiple times. Someone that I've only ever been in multi-person things with that I feel like I mesh really well with is Tom Lawler. I just like him a lot. Firstly, but also we've done a few things where we've had some contact in some matches and it's been really good. Eric Taylor at AIW is another one that like really gelled with. There's a lot. Derek Dillinger and I think I like us better as a team because I feel like we complement each other better in that way. But another guy, total easy to work with, so easy. Just someone you can trust. It's nice.
who are some people you want to face in the future?
I want to face Effie again really badly. We wrestled at Old Wrestling, so we were both playing kind of different characters. So I want to see like Effie versus Magnum CK. I think that's a lot of fun. Um, I'm trying to think of anybody. I'm trying to think like broad because I'm usually just happy to work with whoever I'm put with because I like just I also like wrestling with people who are a little newer. Like there's someone named Shelby Wilder at AIW who has like a Western cowboy type gimmick. I really like to wrestle Shelby. I think that'd be fun. It's funny because my brain usually goes to who would I want to team up with too, like more than I want to wrestle with. Because like I think Shelby and I could be funny together. I'm really enjoying working with Ziggy Heim. We've been doing some tag team stuff here and there. That's been a lot of fun. I'd like to continue, our characters kind of colluding together to some degree. But the first on my list, if I had to make a list, I made like a joke list a while back, and some of the names I put on there actually ended up happening. So the list is I probably need to redo a list, but I think Effie's right up at the top of it.
Um, when you come out, you wear like a cape or like you fold out and it's like a cape type
Uh-huh.
thing. How did that come into like how did your attire?
Mm, like a lot of things, not as a joke, but as typically for me in wrestling, my thought process is I see a lot of people um taking things from other current wrestlers and trying to make them their own, or changing other people's current ideas and trying to make them fit. And I don't operate that way. I try at least to look at what is nobody doing, or what's missing. Like if I look at a card, instead of being like, well, how can I fit in and do what these guys are doing? It's more like, well, how can I stand out and do what they're not doing? And so I think that served me well in the last several years, because I have more of, I guess, what you would call like an old school approach to wrestling. But to me, it's just wrestling. There's all different types of wrestling, but to me, this is pro wrestling. To me, it's pro wrestling that I like, and it's the pro wrestling that I was taught. So that stands out a lot, because it's less about, and I don't mean this negatively, but it's less about like choreography and more about, connection and performance. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with any style, I don't think, as long as no one's dying or whatever, like it's fine. But it's just what works for me. It's what I do best. I can't do what some of these other people do, and frankly, they couldn't do some of the things I can do. So I go that way with my thinking. And I was looking back through a bunch of, I'm always watching old wrestling and current. I mean, I'll watch everything. And I no one was wearing that style of cape. I don't have them made anymore, just because I don't think I wanted to change my look a little bit. I have a different flashy, expensive thing that I wear, but it was like the big Macho Man 80s like poncho style glittery cape. No, I didn't see anybody wearing those. I was like, all right. So I had someone who did not work in the wrestling business design them. I wanted something that looked different. I didn't want a design from someone who designs gear all the time, because I wanted my stuff to look and feel different, and it did, uh, and still does to some degree. So that's how that came about. I was like, I want something flashy that's going to catch people's eye, but also be different, and kind of serve the character, which is kind of this big, bold performer. So now I have made, instead of those big, like kind of square rectangle style poncho capes, I have these like long flowing sleeve jackets made that are really interesting, and really nice, and really expensive, unfortunately. But they serve the same purpose, but they cut a better figure.
Yeah. And many wrestlers either come out wearing just their ring gear or just have like some type of prop with them, not like a big old entrance gear they walk out with.
Yeah, it was, oddly enough, it was Diamond Dallas Page. I was on a show forever ago, and I can't even remember. It was somewhere down south, and Page was there for something. And a couple other guys and myself were just picking his brain, talking to him. And that's one of the things he said. He was like, never walk out just in your ring gear. He's like, you always, even if it's a t-shirt, always reveal yourself to the audience before the match starts. And so that always stuck with me. So I always had something, whether it was a shirt or whether it was a jacket or something zipping up or something.
Um, what's that? SummerSlam. Is that like a poster or something behind you?
Oh, back behind me. Yeah. So my first wrestling tape ever was a used copy of SummerSlam 1989. I can't remember what age I was when I got it, but it was after, I was only 3 when SummerSlam 89 happened. So it was after 1989, but that was the first tape I got. And it's for a long time, it was the only wrestling tape I had. So I just watched it over and over. So it's probably my favorite like wrestling pay-per-view or wrestling show of all time, just for that reason. And it's pretty good. But one year for Christmas, my wife got me one of the SummerSlam 89 posters that was signed by a bunch of people that were on the show, like Bret Hart and Jim Duggan and Brutus Beefcake and a bunch of people like that. So it's only missing a couple signatures of people who are still alive. Uh, I think I can't remember if Shawn Michaels is on it or not. I think Janetti's on it, but I need, if I ever run into the Hulkster dude, I'm gonna have him sign that one, because I don't think he signed it. But most of the half the roster is dead, unfortunately.
Yeah, funny enough, the first pay-per-view I actually watched was also SummerSlam.
Nice. Probably like much long after 1989, though, right?
Yeah. 2020. So
Yeah,
four
there
years
you go.
ago.
Yeah,
Because I
nice.
recently got into it, like
Yeah,
professional wrestling.
that's good, man. That's awesome. You're enjoying the current product then, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty great, right? I think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's that, or do you have a match that you can just watch like over and over that never gets old to you?
Yeah, but they change over time. So I would say if there's one that I could still pop on anytime from that SummerSlam is Rick Rude and Ultimate Warrior. It's about 25 minutes long, 20, 25 minutes, I think. But it's just a masterclass in carefully carrying someone through a match. Rick Rude just carries the Ultimate Warrior through that whole thing and makes him look like $1 million. Uh, that's one of them. The story's fun. Piper comes out at the end. It's really really fun. Bobby Heenan's in it. Bobby Heenan's one of my favorite performers, not just of wrestling but of anything. It's really good. The commentary is great. I mean, it's just a really epic feeling match. It feels like a main event, but it's not. I mean, it's like there's like 4 or 5 matches after that on the card. That's one for a long time. Terry Funk and Ric Flair from the same year. I Quit match. I don't watch that one as much anymore, but that one was on there for a really long time. Um, I'm trying to think of other matches through the year. I'm trying to think of something maybe more current that you would remember or may have possibly seen. There was from SummerSlam 2002, which is still 22 years ago. There was a Kurt Angle Rey Mysterio match that I always was really impressed by. I watched that one quite a bit too. There's some like that whole era from like '02 to like '06. There's some really really good like main event matches that happened and some other matches that happened. But I would say if someone said right now you have to watch a match, it would either be that SummerSlam Rude and Warrior. Owen Hart and Bret Hart cage match would be right up there too. That one's really good. I could watch any Bret Hart match except for the Bob Backlund one because it's really boring and I don't think it's Bret's fault. But Bret's one that I could watch any one of his matches, especially anything in WWF, or before his WCW run. But I could watch it. There's a great match that opens that SummerSlam '89. The Brainbusters versus the Hart Foundation. It's a perfect tag match. Like it's just absolutely the perfect formula, the perfect finish, every step of it is absolutely perfect.
The reason I asked that is because there's actually one that I could watch over and over again,
Yeah, what's
and
that?
it Jeff Hardy versus Triple H and Edge, Armageddon, 2008,
Oh yeah, I know
when
what you're
Jeff
talking about.
won the WWE title for the first
Yeah,
and only time in his career.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's that kind of era I was talking about too. Like the main events in that time frame were just really, really solid.
Yeah. That match made me tear up a bit because, like I said, it's the first time he won that match. I'm
Yeah.
a huge fan of the Jeffs, so that's one I always go back and watch. Well, that's all I had for you.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for having me, man. It's really fun talking to you. I'd like to come back sometime in the future.
Hold on. Is there oh my gosh. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we hop off?
No, just go to local wrestling. I mean, just go and have fun and don't be mean to people out of it. Just have fun.
Well, I actually told my dad I was interviewing you tonight, and he was pumped.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you can, give me a shout out real quick, and I'll send it to him.
Yeah, yeah. What do you want me to say?
You can say like his name is Ricky. Say like what's up to him or something.
Ricky, this is Magnum CK. It's been a long time, and I would like to know what your current training regimen is. I want to know what your diet looks like. I would like you to get back with me so that I can check in with you and make sure that you're living the right lifestyle, brother.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan's one of the favorite wrestlers for you to use that voice.
Need
So,
to get to the gym, dude.
you have a good one.
You too, man. Thanks.